Today I'm going to show you how you can get these really cool Polaroid transitions for your music videos, and I think these are really fun and being used a lot more, so I'm going to go over these in depth and kind of show you how you can do something similar. Now, really quick, you're going to want to head over to my website and download my film effects pack. That way you can use the same assets that I'm using, but you're more than welcome to follow along and use whatever overlays or PNGs that you have laying around. So without wasting too much time, let's just jump right into this first transition. Now, for this we have two clips, and we're going to have the Polaroids sort of stack onto frame, and that will be our transition. So the first step is I'm just going to open up my Polaroid overlays, and I'm going to select two of these and drop them into our timeline. And for the first one, I'm just going to put an image in there really quick. So I'm dragging this in, and I'm just going to scale it up so it fits the frame. I download this on Google Images, so it's a bit tiny. And really quick, you're just going to grab the pen tool, and you're just going to mask it out so that it fits the Polaroid itself. And these are pretty simple to do, but sometimes you might need to zoom in really quick, but I think this one's alright. So just like that, we already have this in the frame, but I'm going to just link this to this Polaroid using the parent link, so it's a little bit easier. And I'm going to drag this over here so it's sort of on the edge, and maybe even scale the whole thing up just a bit so it covers the frame. And now we're going to repeat that same process with the other two Polaroids. Sweet, and we're back. And just like that, you can see that we sort of have these all linked to their own Polaroids. Now the important thing about linking is now if I move this top layer that the image is linked to, it will move with that, so that just helps us stay organized. Now we're going to want to have these start about 10 frames or so before these clips transition, and we're also going to want them to end about 10 frames or so after. So on Windows, I'm using Control-Shift-D, and that will just help you split these clips. And just like that, we already have this sort of working, but in order for this to really work, we're going to make sure that you can't see any of the background. So I'm just going to adjust some of the scale and the position of these images just so that it looks a little bit better and covers the full frame. Sweet, and we're going to want these to sort of stagger on so it's a little less abrupt. So really quick, I'm just going to select some of these layers and just drag them a little bit in the timeline. And I'm just going to move everything in our timeline a little bit so that that yellow clip at the top is on before the transition. And I'll even have these stagger off as well, so I'll do something like this. And just like that, we already have a really fun transition, but just to sell it a little bit more, I am going to go over to my overlays folder, and I'm going to grab my night sky overlay and drop that into our timeline. And I'm just going to want to find a section of it where it's kind of a little bit of a flash, almost like a little bit of a film burn. So I think something like this right here should work. So I'm just going to hit Command-Shift-D, split that clip, and then go a little bit forward in it, split that clip again, and then drag this over some of our footage. And over here in the blend mode, in the toggles and switches, we're going to actually go to the blend modes. And right now it's set to normal. You can definitely play around with this and add whatever, blending modes you want to make it cool. There's a million ways that you can do it. But I think what I have in the video, I was using divide just to be like a quick little flash. So you're definitely going to want to experiment around with it because there's a million different ones you can do. I think some of the ones up here can be pretty trippy, pretty cool. But yeah, just to keep it simple, I'm going to keep it on divide, and I'm actually going to shorten this just a little bit too. Alright, and just like that, we have these clips jumping onto the frame. We also have this overlay sort of working like a trippy little flash on that. I think that's really fun, but just to sell this a little bit more, I'm going to grab Drop Shadow, and I'm going to drop that onto our different Polaroid layers. And we're just going to play with this a little bit. I think we're going to up the distance, up the softness a lot, and maybe just bring down the overall opacity just down a smidge. I like the direction of it, but depending on what you're doing, you can definitely have some fun with that. And I'm going to drop that onto our different Polaroid layers. And this will just help add a little bit of depth. You're not really going to notice it as much with the ones in the background, so I'll actually just keep it on the top one. But yeah, I think that just adds a little bit of depth of field to it. And just like that, we already have this really fun Polaroid transition. So sweet, without wasting too much time, let's just jump into our other one. Alright boys, now we're going to move into our second transition. This one is going to have some Polaroids popping up on the screen and then a wipe. Now, really quick, we have our 2 clips in the timeline. And I think that these look good as is. So really quick, let's just go over to our Polaroid overlays and add a couple Polaroids in here. And we're going to go to over our project, and we're just going to select another couple of photos that we can add to this. And we're going to follow that same process as before, where we're just kind of scaling these images to fit within the frames of the Polaroids and masking them, whether using the mask square tool or the pen tool. And we're just going to color code these so it's a little easier to follow along. And I'm just going to repeat that same process, having the Polaroid layer over our image. Alright, and just make sure that you have your image parented to the Polaroid layer itself. And we're going to turn these all back on, and we're just going to start moving around some of these other layers so we can come up with a cool composition for this. I think something like this is kind of fun. Maybe scale these 2 down. And I'm actually going to have this one be the highest one in the timeline. And we'll just kind of move these around a little bit as you see fit. Now, I'm assuming this is kind of something that you guys are alright with sort of cooking up on your own. But if you want me to kind of go over some of these like small little shortcuts and stuff that I'm using, I'd be happy to do another tutorial like that at some point. And I think already this looks really good. So we're going to want these to sort of stagger into the timeline. So I'm just going to select these ones and select these ones and just move them around a bit. Now these sort of all pop in one by one. And yeah, that looks really cool. Now the next step is going to be adding that rotation. So with hitting R on my keyboard, I'm just going to make a layer set at 0, move forward a bit, have it go to 5, and then move forward a bit again and have it go to -5. And then I'm just going to copy these keyframes, paste them, and keep it moving. And you can see that it's in constant motion because these are linear frames. I want them to be a little bit sort of like shutter lag, stop motion-y. So I'm going to right click and hit keyframe interpolation, and then go over here and hit hold. And that's going to keep it so that it's a little bit more kind of laggy. And I'm just going to repeat the same exact process for the other 2. Cool, and just to get a better eye for timing, I'm actually going to move these over to where they're going to be in the timeline. And I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-D on all of these clips and then hit delete. That way this is all happening before the bigger transition. And let's just see how this looks. And this already looks really cool, so I think we're already making some good progress. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make that wipe transition. So really quick, I just saved out another Polaroid from Photoshop that has this image inside of the Polaroid, and I'm just going to drag this whole layer on top. Now I've noticed that sometimes you might have problems with this. It helps if you have the Polaroid in a pre-comp of its own, if you are running into issues with it being like a little bit laggy, or sometimes I'll even just go into Photoshop and save out a PNG. I think that might just be the easiest option sometimes. And I'm just gonna have this new one sort of flipped horizontal, and I'm gonna scale it up. And we're just gonna hit P on our keyboard, and I'm going to have it start from outside of the frame, and it's going to end on a clean wipe, exiting the other side of the frame. And we're just gonna have it so that it leaves the frame by the time the second clip sort of comes in. And alone, that is almost it, but it doesn't look exactly right. So we're going to actually add this effect CC page turn. And you're just gonna wanna make sure that for back page you have it set to none. The opacity is all the way up. It's the same color as the Polaroid that we're using. And you can adjust where this is being pulled from, but the bottom right corner is actually going to work really well for this effect. And we're just going to set a keyframe for fold position, and then I'll hit U on my keyboard. We'll have it start off like that, and we'll have it finish by being sort of dragged something like this. And we'll just try and have that align with the end of our clip a little bit. And I might scale it up and just adjust the general rotation of it so that it fits what we need it for a little bit. And just like that, we have it sort of wiping the frame like that. Now we're super close to being there, but the next step is actually going to be masking the background a little bit so that it comes on in line with our Polaroid image. So I'm just going to put all of this stuff in a pre-comp minus this second yellow clip over here. And I'm gonna split it. And I'm gonna have it so the second clip is a little bit higher. So now we have our individual rotating Polaroids in their own layer with that original clip. And we're just going to make a new solid. And I'll actually name it mask just to be helpful. And we are going to have this track matte to the mask layer. And actually maybe we'll have this happen under. And we'll move this so that it will start to reveal as it's moving. And from there, we're just going to adjust the position and the keyframe of the mask a little bit to sort of wipe with this. Now you can see that as we move it, you're seeing that transition. So we're literally just gonna go frame by frame from the start of these keyframes over here, and we're just going to adjust the position a little bit so that it sort of masks out that original footage. So around here, we will wipe. Now you can definitely get this in one fluid motion, but sometimes it's almost a little easier to just kind of go step by step. And I'm gonna really quickly easy ease these keyframes. Probably should have done that a little bit sooner. And I'm just gonna make sure that the easy ease didn't mess this up too much. Cool, and just like that, let's see what we cooked up. Oh, really quick, you're going to want to duplicate your pre-comp layer, and then you're gonna split it at the playhead of when the mask comes in. And you're just gonna wanna make sure that this top one is set to none. And just like that, we have this really cool effect, and you can see that it's wiping to our next shot. So let's just jump into our next one. Yo, and I'm about to show you guys this third and final Polaroid transition. So really quick, let's just go over to our Polaroid overlay folder, select one, drop it into our timeline. And let's duplicate this layer. And we are going to slide these over a bit. And let's make sure the top one is masked into the Polaroid. And then we are going to parent it to the Polaroid layer. And we're going to make it so that this Polaroid actually scales up from 0. So set a keyframe at 0, move forward, set a keyframe for it to clear the frame. And I'm going to easy ease these. And then we are going to hit R on our keyboard, have it end on 0, but we are going to have it start at -90. Just like that, we're already really cooking. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have motion blur turned on. And then the next step is going to be adding optics compensation to our top layer. Make sure you have reverse lens distortion selected. And we'll have it go from 0 to something like 120. Now back to 0. Now you have to keep in mind that this is going to tweak out your image to be bigger than the Polaroid. So you might just want to go through your keyframes and just make sure that it kind of gets to its biggest point as it's already wiping the frame. You could also really just use like a PNG or something too to make this a little bit simpler. And then we are going to actually copy these keyframes, paste them onto our bottom layer. We can get rid of this one since you won't really see it. And on our top layer, we are going to hit T on our keyboard, then hit U, and move the opacity down. Easy, ease these really quick. And let's look at what we have. Let's just make sure that we have this layer turned off so it's not in the background. And yeah, now let's look again. Now that already looks really cool, but I think in order to make this a little bit smoother, we could always add in my night sky overlay. Now I'm just gonna have this sort of pop on only for about 10 or 15 frames, and just more so around the part where we have a lot of effects happening, just to add a little bit of fun to this. And let's just go play around with these blending modes and see what we can cook up. Sweet, now I have this on divide again, and I've also set this to 38%. And I'm just gonna have this sort of fade off so it's a little bit cleaner. Something like this. And just like that, I think this is a really fun transition. Now, I think that the little flash kind of helps, but you don't even need it. But yeah, I think these are really fun, and if you guys found this at all interesting, please like and subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a ton.